Good afternoon. Welcome to this very special webinar hosted by voestalpine Singling. I am joined by Stefan from voestalpine Singling. In fact, last time I saw you was at the same table, another webinar, so I'm glad that you're back and that we can build upon what we've started. Today we'll be talking about the power of multi-data environments and how to use that for better track utilization and capacity management. You're not alone. In fact, you have Simo here from Predge, Swedish scale-up.
Thank you.
We'll be hearing all about what it is that the company does. That's keen on looking forward to that. Waiting in the wings, we have your colleagues, because you're not alone. We sort of split up this webinar in two, in that you will be talking about what the companies offer, how your cooperation came about, because that's something very interesting that we have in store for you. And then Wolfgang and Richard, who are also here, are going to talk about basically the solution, how it works, and what the added value for the client is. I mentioned cooperation, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but it seems that is sort of the key to harnessing these multi-data environments. So keen to get started. For you joining us, I have my trusted tablet here for your questions. So if you have questions at any time, let's put them in here. For now, I'd like to get started. And I think it's probably appropriate to start with you because, like I said, you're a scale-up. Perhaps not too many companies or people know about what Predge is and what Predge does. So maybe it's a good opportunity here to elaborate.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. So let's start a little bit shortly regarding Predge. Predge is, like you say, a scale-up, what we like to call it. I mean, you could say it's startup, but not anymore. I mean, now we are going international from Scandinavia. What we actually do is smart maintenance through operational excellence and predictive edge. That's where the Predge name comes from, Predge. Right. So I think that's good to understand too what it is. We are actually a 10-year-old company, so it's not just from yesterday. We are a spin-off from the Luleå University, Technical University in northern Sweden, almost close to the Arctic Circle. So you can think what kind of a climate we have, which is nice to have sometimes not when it's 1 meter snow. So now around the last 6 to 7 years, we have actually been operating with the live customers in the rolling stock in the tough conditions and with the freight customers in northern Sweden and all over to Sweden. So basically what we do is, I mean, this picture a little bit explains where Wolfgang will later come back to and explain a little bit about the flow. But basically we can take any kind of data sources from different kinds. It's the weather, if it's wayside like Stefan, and they are representing here from voestalpine signal in Siershahn, which I think it also comes already a little bit into the fit why we are here together. Yeah. So the condition data, but there's maintenance data, production data, assessments, any kind of basically. And what we process in our cloud services and then give a usable insights and data to information to actually users at the end. And the users could be at any level, management, wagon masters, whoever it is, who needs in the organization. And that's very tailored towards each customer actually. And I think that's where our large benefits come into play, that we can take any data, we are agnostic on that, we can use the current technologies, and then we can give that actionable data to the right users at the right time. Yeah. And they can be more efficient in their organization. So, and that's all done through cloud services. Right. So it's basically a very efficient way to deliver that too. Yeah. I come back a little bit later regarding the customers, but like you said, I mean, now we are considering ourselves as a scale-up. You see a few large names, LKAB, which is the largest iron ore producer in Europe, Green Cargo, Cargonet, SSAB, VTG, one of the largest wagon owners in Europe, and CFL, for example. I come back a little bit about the benefits, what they have seen from those in the next slides. So that's a little bit short of Predge. How we actually work in our modular solution, I think this is also important to understand that we start something that we gather data. Yeah. And then we go from that, actually depending on the customer maturity, what they actually can use our analytics tools based on AI and machine learning and all the technologies, and then actually add different features for the decision support and the analytics. That okay, what are your customer problems?
Yeah,
how can we solve the problems, at the right time? Sometimes it's breaks, sometimes it's bogies, sometimes it's something else, and in the rolling stock that we can see in our analytics tools, and then actually solve the problems and help the customers to daily operations actually use it and become more efficient and better all the time. So and that's what we call smart maintenance, basically. Predictive and smart maintenance. And then at the end, of course, if the maturity level also all the way at the end, then you can also even have automatic work orders all the way into your maintenance systems from our system. So basically the whole flow. But normally it's a maturity time, and it takes the time from the customer, depending where they are. But you can start easy, and you can end very good way.
And I remember, because this is not the first time we speak, and I remember that you mentioning specifically that modular approach as having a sort of benefit for the client, and that you're not immediately overwhelmed with a whole suite of features, but that you can sort of pick and choose, correct?
And also what we call sometimes onboarding, sometimes if you want to call it something else, proof of concept, depending what the customer likes. But we normally try to learn the customer over, let's say, 2 to 6 month time. What is really the problem? So we really want to understand what does the customer do and how do they work. So sometimes you start with operational efficiency. How do you work? Rather than putting a system, another system that doesn't help you at all. So you really want to make sure that you land right when you put something new into the customer lab. So you basically go from customer's way of working and adapting to that in the first place. So it's very easy, and we can start in a small scale and then scale up when you both work together over a longer time.
Yeah, because a lot of companies will have data, but you help them sort of make that data into something actionable. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. So we don't be scared. To start something and then grow from there. I think that's our motto basically with the customers. And I think our domain knowledge is one of the key things, that we can't do this kind of systems in this branch if you don't know how the customers and how the trains operate. And that's why it's very important for us in the first place.
In keeping this an interactive session, do you mind if I shoot the first question?
Sure.
Because I see one come in, so why not? Does Predge measure yourself? Do you have monitoring data, or is the data delivered to you?
Data is delivered to us. I mean, it's a customer's data.
Right.
It's not our data. We just use that data and give it back. So we never own the data.
Understood. Thanks.
So in the next slide, this is just I was referring to some of our key customers, LKP, like I said. I mean, what we have been helping them since 6-7 years back, being from 70 to 30 predictive to reactive ratio in the maintenance operations, now to 90 to 10. It might be even more. But I mean, every percent here, I mean, it's a huge savings, of course, in not only in the assets, but also if you think of the environmental effects, that less usage of the natural resources and everything. And then at the same time, the CargoNet and SSAB up to 90% increase of or less stops on the track, which is a very important. If they are, if it's a steel shuttles or if it's something else, the assets that are going back and forth, who owns the cargo, it needs to go from A and B all the time, 24/7, 365 days. And if we can decrease that from 90%, actually the stops on the track in the middle of the forest, you can imagine what kind of savings that also gives to the customers. So I don't need to elaborate probably more on that, but I think it just shows that our prediction models actually work. So it's not just talk; it actually works, and it gives concrete examples and effects to the customers. So that's I think Wolfgang will also come a little bit later, exactly a little bit the flow how our information works.
Yeah, this is incredible. Looks very good, and I believe that you have a video lined up that will
show a little bit.
We'll get to see what it actually is.
Yeah, we can show the video. So not that long.
Yeah.
Safe and reliable train transport with high availability requires intelligent and efficient maintenance. Breakdowns have serious consequences. The key to operational reliability and high availability is knowledge of the condition of the vehicle fleet. Predge Rolling Stock is a cloud-based and hardware-independent analysis tool that manages data from various data sources. Data from onboard and wayside sensors, as well as historical system and component data, are collected and processed by Predge Rolling Stock as new data comes in. The actionable insights are provisioned to the different target roles in the organization. Maintenance staff can directly obtain information that facilitate maintenance activities. Operating personnel receive information about asset conditions and operational performance. The outcome speaks for itself.
Thanks, Simo, for the videos. Great to see those testimonials in there. That must be very rewarding. Thank you for elaborating what it is that Predge does. This will all make all the more sense when you, Stefan, elaborate what it is that voestalpine signaling does in this context. Before we hear how that all interconnects, because that's obviously going to be a very interesting part of the show. But before we do, please.
Thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure to be here. So railway systems, as you know, signaling is part of railway systems, the world's biggest system solution provider for infrastructure, but also for systems, monitoring systems, rolling stock monitoring, infrastructure monitoring. So we have a lot of experience built up. And if you see more than 160 years of experience, and this, I checked that, it's true, yeah. More than 100, it's already mostly 170 years, I think, where the first turnouts were produced in Austria. So this is really a long way, and we are globally present because we have always the saying we want to be close to the customer. We see this as very important, and this is also one of the success stories of Predge, how they do their business. They are always very close to the customer, so that is a key factor in this success. So we have, of course, 9 signaling locations, and the part that is responsible for rolling stock monitoring, I talked about this last time a little bit. We have also a long way behind of us, so the last 25, almost 26 years, we have gathered a lot of different functions how to monitor. And we usually looked at bearings, wheel sets, also the traction system, the brakes, identification of vehicles, which is very important because, as we talked last time, the identification is the key to also then to do some maintenance, get history data in relation to the different assets to really see how an asset degrades over time. So this is on the right side in this picture, you see also our checkpoints, so a combination of different functions. So you see all kinds of different functions in there. And as I said, we have a long-standing history already. And what I wanted to also demonstrate is the need for data analytics throughout our journey. So in the beginning, and this is a very crucial function, is the hotbox detection. So remember in the 60s, it's the classic, and recent events also in America, the catastrophic derailment, it demonstrates the significance of such a system. And this kind of technology always alarmed. It just said, okay, you went above a certain threshold, the temperature is too hot, so I alarm and there needs to be a reaction. So when you combine that with another knowledge, with multiple HPDs, you get a series of data and you could already elaborate on that and do some trending and get additional information out there. So there's already back then, there was a really primitive need for getting more information out of the data that you got. So quickly we innovated also into hot wheel detection, which is also indication for how the brakes behave, for instance, and other functions like the wheel defect detection or weighing in motion, which is our wild system where we also then detect defects on the wheel sets. We then added the first time our central management software, which is the first time that we had then a software in our place where we could manage the things, not only to look at the wayside monitoring equipment, but also to get history data, the alarming, etc. So we already started very early with software, and we also built up basic analytic capabilities, but we were never recognized as really a data analytics company. Yeah? And this is only natural because our competence and also the credibility towards the customers was always in the field of providing robust and high quality hardware, the sensors, and the IT infrastructure to monitor everything. So we added a lot of more functions throughout the years, environmental control, also RFID tag readers, profile validation systems, and also a couple of years back, our acoustic monitoring system. And at some point, we had so many functions that we also said we want to do this modular. Yeah? So you don't need a cabinet for each function. You want to have a modular approach, high degrees of standardization to get everything in a standardized way to be able to build these checkpoints, which is a huge advantage for our customers that they're able to have standardized spare parts, can add to existing checkpoints, etc. So what I demonstrate also here in the slide is that this is also the point where data analytics becomes more and more important because
the line going up.
Exactly, you generate more and more data over time. So we had even more functions like traction motor detection, cracked rim detection, and last but not least, and this was one of the last sessions, our visual train analysis, and especially with camera systems, you have a lot of data involved. And it's fair to say at this point, and especially for the viewers, it's very important to recognize a data analytics company's trustworthiness is only recognized by the customer's willingness to also pay for the information they receive. So the clients, Predge's clients, pay for information, not for just data. But this does not automatically mean that they are also credible. And to add the credible part, you need to build up a relationship with the customer and show that your analytics capabilities really bring value on the table. And this is one of the things where I can proudly say that we're happy to found Predge, because compared to what Predge can offer, we didn't have the credibility. We had the trustworthiness. We have our customer network worldwide. We have robust IT systems. And we even have a lot of experience in fusing data from different sources, like wagon series, etc. But we never dig so deep into the analytics part to provide this extra capabilities.
And based on what I've heard from Simo, there is a party that has that expertise. So I suspect that there's a lot of wheels here. You weren't about to reinvent the wheel. You sought cooperation. Am I correct?
There's at some point you can only go two streams. Either you come up with a data analytics company by yourself, so you build up teams, you try to hire talent, and especially in the part of data analytics, it's good people are hard to come by these days. So, and the other part would have been that we try to acquire or to cooperate with another company. And there's a lot of companies out there that we have found that already have a certain reputation, or they claim that they know special areas, but to have really the skill set and the credibility in this specific field, we could only find in Predge, and this is where we very early on also tried to get in contact, and we hit it off quite from the beginning, quite from the start, and found that we have a mix and match here.
Because seeing all this and hearing this, it makes sense that a sort of legacy company of 160, almost 170 years old, would find a partner in a scale-up with the 10 years of operation. But you could also be excused for thinking that that is a sort of odd matchup. But
it definitely is. But you have to think. So if you have somebody that goes to the client who has expert knowledge in wayside monitoring, so the infrastructure, how you build IT data streams, how you collect the data, and then you have somebody who has means of understanding the customer's problem and narrowing it down to one specific problem and solving this database problem. If you combine those forces, you can create a lot of value for the customer. And we have first success stories that where customers already see that value, and they see what we can do when we work together. And yeah, in the next couple of years, we will of course emphasize on that and build up.
And when did this start? Is this something recent? Is this something that was set in motion a few months ago, or what can you tell us about that?
I think the discussion has been going on already more than a year. It's more than, I guess, it's materialized during the last year. We did some tests or did something, and now I think it's more in the phase that, okay, now we know it will work. It's more that, okay, now let's just launch and do this. I think from Predge's side, if you look a little bit elaborate on the corporation side, I mean, it's more that, I mean, we are like, coming from the Nordic countries, going international, we have customers in UK, we are going into Australia and different places, and of course, seeing the possible cooperation with leader company in the wild side or wayside detection, and of course that gives us more on the other side credibility on the other side. So that's where the match comes. I think it's a very good fit. So now it's more for to see that scale it up.
Now Simo, you said you're really branching out through that partnership. Can we call it a partnership? Is it a partnership? Should we call it something different?
No, it's a corporation.
Partnership? Yeah. Excellent. What does that mean, or what did it mean for your organization? What did you have to change anything in order to go on this road of partnership? Or?
I would not say that we have to change anything. I think our customer approach is the most important, and that's what we're still keeping. Like Stefan's explaining too, I think they're keeping the customer close and working close with them. That's where we want to be. If it's a partnership ourselves, that doesn't really maybe change. It's more that we have our own different parts in that, and and from this, let's say, regional partnership, evaluation going further step by step. It's a little bit like with our customers too. Don't take all chunk at once. Start somewhere and do something and show the customer value. So definitely, I mean, we see a good possibilities with this.
And Stefan, you mentioned already to some extent how Predge's skills complement those of voestalpine signaling. Is there anything that stood out for you or that you want to highlight as being important for your organization?
Especially, we always try, because we have so many functions and we have very complex customer situations, as we try to standardize as much as possible, of course, but every customer in every country is different. They have a different IT environment, different cybersecurity measures, different needs when it comes to alarming or fleet condition monitoring. So also if we are in the different areas, metro, high speed, heavy haul, they all have different kind of needs. What new capabilities that we learn from Predge is this really narrowing down to one single problem, solve that problem in a very short time, because voestalpine is a very large company. Railway Systems itself is a very large entity. So we are not used to have like this small project to quickly produce that. So Predge is our key to have this speedboat of delivering fast results. So it enables us to also show the customer the value at a very early stage. And on the other hand, we can bring the right contents also to the table to get everybody that is required on the table, so that they share the data with us, so that we can, together with Predge, provide the information they need. And what we have found is that some customers are not as digital mature as they would need to be in order to use these services, but we can also help there. And this is sometimes it's not as complex as it seems, but you need to have this openness and a really honest, open discussion and the willingness to implement such a system.
You mentioned maturity just now. Totally understandable, of course, because you need to have that capacity to not only collect the gathered data, but probably also a basic sense of how to make sense of that. I would imagine that means that you cannot simply, the two of you, go out to every market, just any market for your solutions. You would need maybe certain clients in certain markets, or is it not that black and white?
I would say it's not not that black and white, because of course there's more matured countries. For instance, the Netherlands is a perfect example. You know it very well. We have a high density of wayside monitoring equipment, and also the data interfaces are quite, and this is exactly where it goes in this multi-data environments.
Yep.
If you collect passenger data with wayside monitoring data, with onboard monitoring data, and maybe maintenance, you can do a lot of things that you can't do with just one of those. So we have the capabilities as railway systems to, of course, get these data sources, but to really have then the credibility to add the information-based data analytics on top of that. That is a service that Predge brings a big step further.
Yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned this, that you mentioned data and analytics, because I'd like to take this moment to insert a few more questions, because they keep coming in. It lands on the topic of data ownership. What is your experience of that? Is that a big deal on the customer side, or are they sort of hesitant to share that with you, or is that changing and that companies are becoming more open to sharing the data with yourselves?
Yeah, I would say that it depends on the country too.
Right.
And partially, like Stefan was saying, there's a cybersecurity issues that might be an issue sometimes, but we haven't really come into that much. So the customers, if we show the value and we can start working with them, normally they share the information to us. Then normally we work in that, in that country, that's where we are operating. And that's why I think it's important that we start in certain selected markets and test, okay, this is how it works, and then build from there.
Yeah.
So normally we don't see that as a problem. But of course, cybersecurity issues and other issues we have to take into account. And if that is an issue, then we can solve it. We already have that in place.
Yeah, we see it in a very same way, that there is a data ownership is a very important topic, and this is discussed on so many summits as a deal breaker for some folks. So internally, they are very afraid to do something wrong. So they close up and build new silos. And this is where we can come in. We work with these silos and interconnect them without breaching something like a data ownership. We don't need to own the data. We just provide services so that the clients can understand the data better and get actionable insights into their data. That's what the service is about.
Yeah. In keeping with on that topic, again, a question for you, Simo. Does Predge include infrastructure data management? And I think
this cooperation. Right now we're talking about the rolling stock. We have done projects and we do also things in the infrastructure, but this does not include that.
Okay.
So this is right now on the rolling stock level.
Right.
So for that part, but the knowledge and the know-how is there too.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
But it's now we focus on selected markets, rolling stock, and that partnership.
Yeah. I have one more, and then we sort of reached the halfway point. A country-specific question I see. Has Trafikverket in Sweden outsourced some of its tasks completely to Predge, or do they still have some responsibilities when it comes to, for example, HABD alarms and warnings?
That's a specific customer question, so I would not really go into so detailing in that. But of course, we are happy to work with Trafikverket also if that would be desirable.
Yeah.
So I don't want to elaborate too much on a specific customer case.
Now that you mention a customer, a client, Stefan, one more thing. You said data silos, which reminds me of, like I said, what companies often mention at conferences, in that sometimes separate divisions keep their information, their data separate in silos, as you rightfully put. How much of an obstacle is that, or do you see that changing, or is your cooperation, in fact, intended to change that?
So, partially, yes, we intend to change that to a specific problem tailored. So, Wolfgang, who will join the session later, and we talked about what we can deliver is we look at specific problems. Let's say you have a problem with utilization of wagons. We can help you with that. But we will put this problem into a larger perspective so that we later on, the customer, and later on build more and more data bridges to get to the ultimate goal to have maximum utilization of these products and then optimized cost savings. This is something that we can also offer. So I don't see from a technical perspective there is not a problem with data silos. From a government's perspective, there is of course hurdles, but we have come to learn that if you sit around the table with the right persons, there is no problem that you cannot solve by just talking it out and create win-win situations.
Yeah. Cool. In terms of speaking about maximizing and utilization, we're going to just quickly go over your company video, just to remind ourselves the area of your expertise. Maybe you can sort of quickly
absolutely
narrate as to what we see, and in the meantime, we'll ask your colleagues to join us.
Absolutely.
Thanks again, Simo. Thanks again, Stefan. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Nick. So basically, what you see in the beginning is a train arriving, something that we call a gantry with laser distance sensors, which is our profile validation system, where you can also alarm on obstacles hanging from trains or other things that penetrate that safety envelope. The next thing that you see here is our acoustic monitoring, which can hear degrading bearings, but also other degrading things that you can measure just by looking at the sound patterns. The train now drives over something that we call WIM, WDD, so it's a wheel set defect detection and also weighing in motion system. The next thing here is our traction motor HPD and HWD, so wheel set temperature and also bearing temperature measuring system, coming to our visual train analysis, where we look at all kinds of surfaces. We look at wheel sets, the carriage, undercarriage. We look at the surface upsides. You see number recognition, rim thickness, QR codes, etc. Everything that you can visually inspect. And last but not least, also a pedal tracker that detects obstacles that are hanging from the train, which can also be, of course, recorded by camera and then reported to our CMS system. I think the important point here is that all this data is flowing into something that we call trackside cabinet, and from there it's further transmitted to our central system.
Amazing, thank you, Stefan. In the meantime, I've been joined by your colleague, Richard Lenthall, and Predge's Dr. Wolfgang Birk. We've heard from the company, so maybe a quick introduction, Wolfgang, what it is you do at your organization, and from you yourself, Richard, maybe quickly elaborate on your role.
Yeah, I'm Wolfgang Birk, and I'm CTO at the company. I'm part of Predge since 2015, so I have been working a lot with the development of the analytics solutions that we actually provide.
Wonderful. Richard, welcome back.
I'm Richard Lenthall. Hello, once again. Hi, good to see you. My name is Richard Lenthall. I'm the Vice President of Customer Management at voestalpine Signaling Siershahn. As part of Stefan's team, I'm responsible for the commercial activities of the organization around the world.
Great. So we've heard from your esteemed colleagues sort of the separate skills, how they complement each other, how they interact. I believe now you, Wolfgang and Richard, you're going to elaborate on sort of what it actually is that you offer, the added value for the client, and where the sort of different skills like really complement each other. So I think, Richard, you will start things off. Yeah?
Indeed, yeah. So as Stefan was guiding us through just a moment ago, what you see on the screen in front of you really is what we call the Phoenix MDS checkpoint, and an arrangement of our monitoring functions that can be installed in or around the track to pick up information from passing trains. Now, as was alluded to previously, you know, what customers were doing 20 years ago was having an individual system backed up by a data presentation software of just taking one particular input and giving one particular output. And that was very relevant when we talk about hot axle box detection, where the customer was essentially just using that for stopping trains and getting a simple alarm. What we have managed to do again over the last 5 years is take the whole portfolio that we offer to railways around the world and convert that into data representation where the customer has one single recognizable user interface. I look at it as, in some respects, say the Microsoft Office of wayside monitoring. So you've got those different applications all on one structure. You don't need to go out and buy individual applications anymore. They're all loaded onto one piece of software. And you know how each one of those applications interacts with each other. they use the same commands, and you're familiar with it. And that is really, from my perspective, one of the advantages of CMS. It looks the same, and it performs the same, and the customers get used to it. Okay, so then when you have the CMS, you've got the functions installed at the track side. They all talk the same back-end language. They all interact with each other, and that gets put into the Phoenix CMS. We offer to the client a number of applications.
This is sort of their dashboard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, yeah. And we spend a lot of time from experience, really, but also from a value add perspective, talking to the customers as to how they want their software to work. Yep. That's really important because each railway, as Stefan and Simo were talking earlier on, each railway is different. There's a track, and then there's rolling stock, but the way in which the railway is purposed is different from country to country, from operator to operator. So we have to understand, we want to take a lot of time to speak to the customer as a partner and say, how would you like this to work? Who needs to be notified? When do they need to be notified? What is the message that they need to be given? And how would you like those people to react? And as we'll come on to shortly, where else do you want the software and the data, moreover, to be sent? So we have a range of applications that deal with and represent that. The alarming and intervention application, for example, going back to the HBD historical issue, is that is where the alarms are sent, and that is where we tell the railways signalling employees, you should stop that train, or at least you should slow it down, because we think there may be a severe issue with it. With the fleet condition monitoring application, that is where the condition-based data is represented in a dashboard where people can say, okay, you've got this issue, it looks like it's been getting worse for the past couple of weeks.
So where Stefan earlier explained like what sort of functionalities or in terms of data gathering were added, this is how that is translated to or conveyed as information to the client.
Yeah, absolutely. So we slice it and dice it, and then we present it to the dashboard, and then the customer will log in, and they will see the data that is relevant to them. Because as bad as having no data, it's having too much that you just can't see the wood for the trees, and you don't know which decision to make next. So we work specifically with profiling to ensure the right people in the right area get the right data. Okay, so we have simple things like system supervision reports. System supervision really is the system itself healthy, or does it need assistance, and so forth. And those are then backed up by groups of employees at the railway themselves, at the customer, who will interact with those dashboards and take the necessary precautions and actions based on the data. Okay, and as I came briefly earlier on, then what we do is we look at piping that information into other systems that customer may need us to work with. So, for example, email and text message servers, the OCC train operating centers, the rolling stock operators, who in many cases are customers of our customer, and other signaling contracting software for the protection of the system.
Now, of course, I for one am extremely curious as to where Predge comes in, and I'm kind of hoping that you have something along those lines lined up here.
Yeah, in the best case, Adelia Smith, here's one I made earlier. So where Predge fit into this is that they will take the data from certain roles and subsections of the CMS itself, and then what they do is they add value by calculating and analysing the data beyond what Phoenix CMS is left to do. Yeah.
There we hit sort of the key, the crux of the matter, in that is the layer you add for the end user. Is that right, the end user?
Yeah. Exactly. And there are a number of end users already pinpointed, essentially, in our collaboration as well, because we understand that where we come from, we very closely meet, essentially, the train operators, the planners, the people that actually take decisions on maintenance. And this is then, in a sense, somewhat parallel, complementary, and extending essentially the different kinds of roles. So we provide them essentially with this actionable insights on their own playground. So that's where we want to be. And in order to provide these kind of actionable insights, we essentially start by data that comes directly from the CMS system, where we have wayside data from the wild systems, from the AMS system, where we try to understand essentially the small details, aggregate them up, complement them with the information from the maintenance system, from production systems, and also from environmental factors. So all this will be brought into one big pot where we perform our analytics on and then provide the insights.
Then also mean that you're sort of meeting the client in, you mentioned playground, in sort of familiar territory, so as to not to overwhelm them as to what is capable or what you can offer?
Yeah, exactly, because that's also what Simo already before mentioned, that everybody has a way of working. Mm-hmm. They have a certain kind of operation. We can always say, well, train operator A and train operator B, they would operate more or less in the same way because it's a train operator. But that is not really true. They all have their own implemented way of working, which somehow subtle differs from each other. Mm-hmm. And by being able to meet them exactly where they work and how they work, we can also help them by lowering the threshold, because these are digital tools. Mm-hmm. And the worst thing that you can have is that everybody has to go in education for a long time period to try to understand how to use them. Mm-hmm. So we want to actually simplify the tools in such a way that they can continue in their way of working, mm-hmm. add value by making it easier. Yeah. And there you have also value then, early on.
But building on that, what then is the trigger for these companies to move to the next stage beyond of what you can do?
Yeah, that's the values. So as soon as we have found a, let's say, a problem space where we can see here's a need, here we can solve the problem, and then we can also prove that this is really true. Like we've seen before, that we would, more than 80% of our stop-in lines we could actually prevent because we know before they actually happen. Then we can actually tell them not to leave the train yard with this specific wagon. In that sense, they can also certify and validate that these insights are true. Mm-hmm. And by this truth, which we always present to our customers openly, they can always see, okay, this is the value I've created today, tomorrow, and the day after. And when that happens, it's also much easier from a management perspective to see what value is actually created. Yeah. So the validation stage is a very important phase, which we not do in the end. We usually start it right from the start.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, you try and trigger an interest within the company to explore further and to look beyond as to what is possible through insights, and to use that key phrase, actionable insights.
Yeah. And that's exactly how what you said, that we narrow it down, and then when you have found the values, then you can also see all of a sudden you have more time, more creativity, and understand what are the next problems. So take the first problems that are critical at the start, mm-hmm. and then grow from there. Yeah. And this involves usually also what kind of data do you have available, how much time can you actually spend on, let's say, working with the tools. So this will also grow because you free up, mm-hmm. all of a sudden time, quite a lot, mm-hmm. by that. So our experience from our customers usually that they start narrow and then they start to grow, and usually they find many more problem points that they have not even been aware of before. Mm-hmm. And then combining the data, providing the insights, and showing that to them is the critical part.
Now, Richard, you, as I recall correctly, are more on the sales side, simply put. This is no longer sort of merely a product. This is more like a process that is being offered, or a way to insights. How does that change your approach with companies?
Substantially and fundamentally, yes. So we are moving from more of a product sales approach, which is there is a need that you qualify, then you respond to that need by offering a defined product, and the customer then, fingers crossed, makes a purchase in your direction. What the software and this partnership is now beginning to explore is more of a consultative sales approach, where you need to have a needs analysis with the customer, where you need to engage the customer and sit around a table with some nice coffee and some sandwiches and spend a couple of hours going, oh, what is it that you need us to do in order for you to make a decision. And as was said earlier, you engage with partners with credibility, which I think is a two-way street, I'd like to think. and you create that level of understanding which keeps the customer engaging with you. And I very much see on a regular basis Wolfgang's perspective of the customer has often with us started small with 1 or 2 purchases of systems and then some software, and has come back to us repeatedly over the years to look for more and double down on their investment in software.
Yeah, because that's what I wanted to ask. Is I asked the same question to Simo and Stefan, in the sort of insights you've gathered from one another in working with one another. What would you say was that for you, and how or what did you find important in your line of work about the Predge approach? Doors open.
I think we've got a very long, storied history of providing good quality systems that go into the track, and we've had to previously turn down opportunities, you could say, where customers have approached us with questions that we weren't really resourced or basically in a position to answer. And now what is beginning to happen is customers are coming to us where we can, as a team, to put it basically, explore what that situation looks like and what the value is. Yeah. And because this is not perhaps only new for you, but also for, I imagine, for a lot of companies, new that they're not buying a product, but buying into a process or insights. How is that received, or not always easily, to be honest. No, I mean it's as I was saying, anybody that was present at the summit in Constance, the story I began to tell was through my presentation was that previously customers would start off with a need for a product, and then what I've witnessed in my 8 years working for voestalpine is that the customers would go, okay, we've got the product, now it's delivering a signal. What do we do with the signal? How do we react? And then, okay, what are we going to do with the data? And like, oh God, how do we get it into this other system that we've been using for 20 years? And what I would like customers, or any railway, to be honest, to focus on, the question is start with the data usage. You're going to get the system. How do you plan to use that output? Okay, and what do you want to do with it? Yeah.
Exactly, because you had the question about the data silos as well. I mean, when you have all these data available and they're all in different isolated systems, then the obvious question is, do I have now equally many different kinds of tools that I have to work with in these different silos? But that's actually where we come from, where we thought that, well, this is the thing that we have to break, because we have to be able to interleave all this data, because only then we can also make really new insights about that. And especially also this fact that, well, you have a wheel damage system, for example, where you have wheel impact load data. Why not use it together with the hotbox data? And combining all these kind of data sets, because they are relevant. It's still one and the same asset. So breaking the silos is very important. And then meeting the customer. How often is it that you, maybe show an example here, where we often show customers typical interfaces. The first reaction is, we're looking at an interface right now. This is a typical interface that a customer would use, for example, where you can see, well, this is a wagon that has certain aspects to it where you highlight only the critical deviations and what's important. But if you show that, well, this is not for me. This is the first reaction of a customer, well, this is not me. I have a different process here. I have a different way of working, maybe. And what we usually tell them, well, this is just an interface as an example, because it can always be tailored. We have to be flexible, and we have to meet them, as we said, on the playground that they act on, on that everyday business. So if they need something which would look like this, then, well, that's a perfect match. And quite often it's not so different from that in the end, but we have to listen to them. And then the sandwiches come in, where we actually have to sit down around the table and really listen to them and understand their problems. Usually they crack down to quite similar solutions, but somewhere we have to start to talk to them on their own way of working. And then you can tailor these quite easily. The technologies these days, they are fairly advanced, where you can interact these kind of data sources with interfaces. And it's really not rocket science anymore to create these kind of dashboards and adapt them to their needs.
Yeah. Now, speaking of needs, I'd like to take a moment for a question because we have one come in that wonders, because there's so much that is possible nowadays. Where does your reach end within the control of the railway line? Can you inspect either with sensors or fiber optics, with the ultimate goal of can you even sort of predict like rocks falling on tracks, or and how do you put that in place?
That's just 10 seconds from my side before I hand that over. I think from our point of view, we can provide data that is piped into the CMS, and that's our goal. Our goal here is to provide an interface from CMS to Predge for the mutual benefit of both the customer and our organization. So if the data is in CMS and the customer allows that data to be shared, which is perhaps another topic, then there's no boundaries on our side. But those particular examples that you've listed there in the question, they are what I would call environmental condition monitoring. That is something that happens on the end of an environmental or a climatic event. We do have a system that monitors that to some extent. Is that piped into Phoenix CMS? Yes, it is. Is the actual event of rockfall currently available? That is something that we would look to a third party to provide. But from Predge's point of view,
well, right now the collaboration focuses on rolling stock and also the CMS data, and where we are actually excellent at. So we have a ready product on that end, which also means that we want to leverage and deliver our customers with the best possible things. Developing in the future into something else, that is obviously possible. But right now, detecting rocks on the line, I wouldn't say that we would even focus on that.
Yeah. Well, something else, if you don't mind, well, because I've seen a few come in. I thought it's probably an appropriate time. Let's see. Yeah, the data coming in from the customer's existing sensors. You use, if I remember correctly, an algorithm for that. Is that the use of the algorithm, and I quote, fully transparent and explainable to the customer?
That's a very good question, because this is the typical thing about AI, where you usually just put everything into a magic box and then you get some answers, but you cannot really relate to where they come from. The simple answer here is that it was in the beginning on one of the slides where we actually show that we use domain knowledge and also, let's say, physics-based understanding together with AI algorithms, which means also that let's say, the majority of the understanding that we put into that is also a similar understanding that our customers have. So they can relate to that. And that's also very important, because the trust by the users is only gained if they also understand it. So the explainability we have, it's to what degree it is exactly transparent. That I think is more a close discussion between the customer and us, in a sense, what is needed. But it is all about actually getting trust to these algorithms, because they all operate fully autonomously and by no other, let's say, human intervention in a sense directly. So even when we generate work orders, which we have been doing for more than 4 years, is in the end a fully automated process where no one is intervening anymore. But that requires that you start somewhere, you validate it, and then you come to the point that you have a common understanding and trust to this solution and essentially to the insights and the decision making. So that's
and this, in a way, is sort of related to that question and the matter of trust, in that what can Predge do, or how can Predge help in a way to check the quality of the data that is delivered to you?
That's something we actually can do quite well together, I would say, because we have always been, let's say, cautious about the data that we get. So essentially, all our algorithms are usually equipped with these kind of typical sanity checks. They contain algorithms that safeguard, essentially, that the data that comes in is also good enough, in a sense.
And I think that's also one of the values that we present to Predge and the customer is because of the fact that voestalpine has already invested the time and the money to ensure that our functions report in the same manner and the same data platform. That again, if you take a data set from the acoustic sensor and you take a data set from the HBD, that those two sets of data are represented in the same way, in the same language, in the same format. And so those systems are also capable of sort of cross-referencing each other. So when by the time it gets to the third party, then there's already a sort of cleansing process that's happened, so to speak.
Before we continue with questions, I believe you have another slide. Is there something you need to finalize your wrap up on your end in terms of the message?
Maybe I can see that well, the customer is in the end has different profiles and they have different roles in the organization. And the management organization is also a lot about decision making. So everything which is done essentially on a narrow problem basis in the end will reflect into factors that can be called KPIs or important indicators that tell us that we are actually operating in an excellent and optimized way. And therefore we are always both validating our own tools, but also showing that to the management in a sense and giving them the opportunity. And this is also overlapping how we meet them together, essentially, the customers. What is the best possible choice here, for example? Is it more that should be in a CMS system? Is it more that is a tailored interface?
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm glad you used that word choice, and because there's a question about those actionable insights. Do you see a conflict regarding the reasons behind actionable insights that your system generates between infrastructure managers and rolling stock operators? For example, what can be the root cause of an issue? Is that rolling stock or infrastructure?
Well, that's if we.
That's a minefield for us to answer, actually. So
I was just wondering.
The answer to that is actually on my behalf, yes, because we work in. If you look at the way in which the UK railways are administered, there is occasionally, let us just say, or at least there has been in the past, a difference of opinion between the privately held train operating companies and the publicly held infrastructure owner. Yeah, those two organisations clearly have different targets, and that's understood and accepted. So the way in which data is exchanged between those organisations is also a topic of sensitivity, and we have to tread carefully to see how we manage that. We are as open and as flexible as the law and the commercial terms that we're offered allow us to be.
Yeah. There are a number of outstanding questions, but I'm also looking at the clock and seeing that we have limited time. So I'm going to share these questions with you, with your colleagues, Stefan and Simo, so that our readers will be able to gather their insights. But for now, I'd like to thank you and also thank Stefan and Simo, who are still here, but we've bid farewell to them a bit earlier. Thank you for coming to Rotterdam, for being here in the studio with us. We look forward to the second chapter. We look forward to keeping track of your work, what it is that you do, and to hear all about the future projects and hopefully success stories. And I trust there will be many. I'd like to wrap up here, but not before thanking our readership, our viewers, for the many questions that you've also shared with us. And as a final reminder, tune in tomorrow as well when we host here in Rotterdam the Rail Infra Forum, where we will talking about phasing out diesel operations and switching to more sustainable forms of propulsion. And with that said, thanks again, gentlemen, and that will be all from us here in Rotterdam. Thank you so much.
Every day and every night, trains around the world carry people to the places where they belong. We at voestalpine Railway Systems understand the needs of global mobility. We maximize safety, improve efficiency, and take availability to a new level. Because we believe in railway transportation, the most sustainable mobility system to face urbanization and increasing levels of freight traffic. As the only global provider of complete track system solutions, we offer the most extensive and integrated track portfolio, rails, turnouts, signaling solutions, and services. We build our success on 160 years of experience and with a continuous drive for improvement and innovation. The source of our success is us, the team of voestalpine Railway Systems. We are researchers, seeking for advanced materials and geometries. We are workers, creating rails and turnouts with state-of-the-art production systems. We are developers of smart solutions for the railway infrastructure of tomorrow. It is all of us who deliver track components just in time to any location. And it's us who offer a comprehensive service portfolio along the whole life cycle of our products. We develop the most innovative solutions with a focus on the organization of life cycle costs to keep our promise. We are more than 7,000 colleagues working at 70 locations on 5 continents, combining our knowledge, experience, and talents for the benefit of our customers. This is our contribution to modern mobility and a green planet worth living for future generations. This is us, the team of voestalpine Railway Systems. And together, we ensure performance on track.
voestalpine, one step ahead.